because there's two questions about McKinsey I wanted to ask. You kind of like alluded to, but not really, unpack them. One is, you said it's really stressful, right? Like for people who haven't worked there, what does that mean? Like what is really stressful? Like why is this so so demanding?
It's demanding because it's the peak of client service, right? And client service really means you are at your client service. So whatever industry you're serving, imagine you're serving a financial institution, right? So you're on site all day with them, talking with them, having meetings with them. They leave, and they're bankers, right? They leave like 9, 10, right? It's pretty late. Then you start working, right? That's when you get scene time away from your clients to then go, okay, what did we learn today? How are we thinking? Let's like organize all of these thoughts. So that's why you're up until like 2 a.m, right? Because you didn't start until 10, right? And so that is part of the problems. Because you're a client service, you're at the mercy of your client schedules, what they want, what they need. And so when they need it, you get it to them. That's client service. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is the culture. It's a culture of perfectionists, right? I really respect the place. I got a lot out of the place. I don't want to diss the place. I think it's still a really good launch pad for many careers, but it's a place of perfectionists. And so there's a lot of insecurity. There's a lot of one-upping. There's a lot of how do I get better, but not like by my own metric of better, right? By the company metric of better. And so it felt very linear in that way. And so like, there's only one way to be right. I found that very exhausting because that's just never been me, right? Sure, I was a good student, but I also loved extracurriculars. Same in college, right? I spent 80% of my time on extracurriculars. That's where I shine. That's where I feel the best about myself and grow the most. So at McKinsey, when I would do extracurriculars, I did really cool things at McKinsey, right? I started...
You talked about the seed incubator, right? Yeah.
I started a seed fund and an incubator at McKinsey, right? And
what does that mean? Do you invest in startups at McKinsey?
Yeah, we invest in startups, startup ideas by McKinsey employees. And
while they are still at the firm? Or when they left? Oh, wow.
While at the firm. So it's very interesting because actually a lot of big like Fortune 500 companies also have questions about how do you do intrapreneurship, right? How do you innovation within your, it's a huge topic. And so actually what happened is, I started this incubator within the company and we would grow all these ideas. And actually we ended up packaging it into a client package and we were able to deliver it for clients, right?
Wow.
Just to clients. So I'm like, I love that. I grew so much from doing that work, but it wasn't as recognized as doing your client service well and to the ends of the earth. And I felt like that was a very limited perspective. And so I think that those were big ones. And I think it's unfortunate, but because most consultants are generalists, you're interchangeable, right? You're just interchangeable cogs. And that has benefits and downsides. Benefits being you can go on indefinite holiday, right? Because if you're good enough, you can come back whenever. And because you're the same as all the other people who were good enough. But I think the downside is when something goes wrong, you are also dispensable. Right? Because there's 100 like you where you came from. And that's what I felt as I was leaving. Something pretty bad happened to me at the firm, and I won't talk about it here just because they're like legal implications, but something bad happened to me at the firm, and the firm tried to take care of it, but basically not in the very caring way, right? Like they took care of it on the policies basis, right? All right, we checked all the boxes, we did all the things we should have done. But like when it came time for my review, for example, like there was no acknowledgement of what happened to me, merely why did you take a month off, right? I'm like, well, because I'm human, right? And something bad happened to me at your firm, sir. And I think that was when I knew I couldn't be there because it no longer represented the kind of leadership I admire and aspire to. It no longer represented work that really inspired me. I think one other tough thing, and this was a personal one, I think a lot of people actually really enjoyed this part about the company, is it's very intellectual. really thinks a lot of about like really big issues and important issues. But I love doing things, right? I love implementing things. I like seeing things come alive, and that's less of the work. And so I missed that. So at that point, all of these factors combined meant that this place was no longer a right fit for me.
I see. Yeah. I'm so glad you went through all that and you're here today. I have a question. So what would you do if you're not afraid? Like if you could do anything, what would you do?
What would I do? I feel like I'm already doing it. I'm just starting my company. But what else would I do? If I were not afraid? Literally nothing. I'm doing it. And this is why I love what I'm doing, because it feels terrifying every day and it feels like luxury every day because it's freedom. And that's what I said in the beginning of, this is how I define my life now. And so, yeah, I feel good about this actually.
I love it.
Nothing else I would be doing if I weren't afraid. Yeah, this is the scariest thing I've done.
Tell us more about Cherish. So what is Cherish? What do you do with Cherish?
Yeah, so Cherish is helping parents with teenagers build healthier relationships with their teens. So we do that in a few ways. We write content that's specific to parenting teens. And we provide coaching for parents with teens to help them think through what are their parenting values, how do they exercise that, what strategies work for them, what resources should they use. And then we also host groups for parents of teens. And the whole idea is like, there's good research out there, right? We know things about best practices about parenting. We know things about how to foster mental well-being, and parents are a huge part of that, especially at the adolescent stage. And so how can we basically upskill parents? Think about it. There's training for every single job in the world, not parenting, but it's an important job and it's a job, right? It's hard work. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm building this company providing these services.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I also got questions from people asking how they want to work for moms or parents, but they're personally not a parent yet. How do you get started? Like, you're passionate about them, but how if you're not them yet?
Yeah, well, so this is part of why it's terrifying every day. Every day I'm like, am I an imposter, right? Like, what am I doing telling parents how to parent when I'm not a parent, right? But I think you look for places where you can have shared experiences, right? How can they have empathy for you and you for them? How can you show them you have empathy for them, right? And I think because I've been working with parents and their teenagers for over 10 years, I know their language. I know the words they use for when they are stressed, for when they are frustrated, right? It's the same words that come out of their mouth. And I think being able to say, I was there, I was that kid. Let me tell you now as an adult about that kid's perspective. And that has some weight because I'm an adult now and I've spent time studying it. And I think that goes a long way, right? When you say I can provide a fresh perspective from a place of empathy. Of understanding you don't mean this and you wish it were different and you wish it were easier. You want the best for your kid. There's so much out there that's like parent shaming, and I think that's the problem, right? You can't try to help someone if you don't respect them, if you don't believe in them, if you don't actually like have empathy for them.
I think you are the first firm that actually offers parent coaching. Like, I look at many startups, but I never see parent coaching yet. Maybe I'm not a target audience, so maybe that's why. But I'm just like, oh, that's so fascinating. What are some patterns you saw from them? Either teens, the parents, like what are, I think we also know it ourselves. Like, I would love to know from your experiences coaching so many parents, what are they?
Yeah, so there are parent coaching companies out there. They're mostly in the early childhood space. So they deal with topics more like sleep training, nursing, etc. We work only with parents with teenagers. And so the topics there are very different. So a few patterns that we notice is the biggest challenge in this period, adolescence and the parents that have adolescents, is individuation, right? When the child is trying to become an adult of their own, they're trying to become an individual, the parent is suddenly faced with all sorts of things, right? You all, like, also in this point in life. You're experiencing physical changes, right? Menopause happens for both men and women. You're experiencing things like careers that are hitting some sort of peak. You're experiencing things like aging parents and taking care of those aging parents, perhaps parents passing away, right? Like that's the time where all of that happens. And so how do you then face this young budding life that is now coming into their adulthood and about to do all the things you wish you had done, you wish you could do, wish you had done differently, right? And so it's just, there's so much desire to shape and control that life, almost because you are looking at the other side of it, facing like the mortality of it all, right? And I think that's what's hard. And so the pattern is anxiety, so much fear that their child won't live up to their potential, fear that something bad will happen to their child will have regrets. And part of the work is helping them see, yeah, life is full of regrets. And that is a life, right? That is how life actually is for most people. And you can't prevent that. So what can you do, right? What can you do to help your children feel unconditional love, that they can become the adult they want to be? And what can you do to feel rest assured that in your 13 years of raising this child, now a teen, you've instilled values, right? You've modeled values for them. You've modeled things like self-care for them. You've modeled what a good life means, and that they'll take that away. And so getting parents to trust themselves is a big part of the work, that they've done it, right? That like your 13 years of parenting is going to amount to something. It's going to look like it didn't for the next 4 years, because this child is doing everything they can to push against you, because that's the point. You got to trust yourself that you've done it for 13 years, and they're going to come out on the other side of this with those values intact. If in this period you can try not to like squeeze them too tight into something else, right? Just like a really good metaphor is like butterflies. You can't cut the cocoon as they're gonna, like they will never fly, right? And that's the point. It's, if you want to use all of your fear and anxiety and envelope this child such that they will never experience disappointment, sadness, failure, like that is a lot of what adolescence has to offer, right? They're going to try all, they think they're invincible, they're going to try all these things, they're going to fail, and then realize, okay, here are the limits for myself, and this is what I'm going to do to overcome those limits. This is how, like, what direction I'm going to take with my life. That's for them to figure out, and you as the parent are their coach, right? So I'm like coaching a coach, because actually parents do matter a lot to their kids, and I think parents don't believe that. And I think society does a lot to reinforce this message of like teens turn into these hellholes by the time they're 13, and they just consume your soul and you hate your life. And I'm like, why does it doesn't have to be like this, right?
Yeah.
And my biggest like 1 second tip is just like, would you do this to another human being? Right? Parents do so many things to their kids out of fear, control, whatever, that they would never fathom doing so to somebody else, right? They're not your property. They're a human being trying to become an individual adult. So what can you do?
The theme of independence is so important. I think especially like helicopter mom, or like there's so many metaphors saying that how parents want the best for their kids, but as a result, they did it for them. Like they basically just like took the job and said, "Hey, I know how to do it, and then this is done." Yeah.
So that's the empathy part, right? Like you have to empathize and understand every single one of these parents are trying to do their best, right? They want the best for their kids. The way they're doing it may be suboptimal, right?
Yes.
And that's where you infuse things like research. Let me show you some statistics. Let me show you some case studies. Let me help you think through, why are you doing this, right? And if it's anxiety, let's talk about that. Let's find ways to self-soothe. And if it's fear, let's figure that out. What is that fear based in? Is it based in your own childhood, something you regret, something you didn't do, right? And that unpacking all of that, I think, is the work of the parent. And I really, really believe all parents can learn something from their children if they're open to it, and the way they expect their children to learn from them. So
yeah. What surprised you? Like, were there any surprises when you talk to the parents, the teens, like, even though you have worked with them for a decade, like I think something will still come up, right?
What surprised me most, and I think this is actually a lot of entrepreneurs, so I'll caveat it with that, is how little it takes. Right? Because I'm here thinking I'm still a little bit perfectionist minded. That goes away really slowly, right? So I'm like, I gotta write this whole series and books and like first of all, I'm not writing books, but like I need to write like everything. I need completeness. I need well research. It needs to be the nth level of detail. And they don't need that. They literally are like, I've never heard of this. Tell me more. And I'm like, right? And
Yes.
I'm immersed in it. I literally read about it every day, study it every day, think about it every day. And so to me, it's all common knowledge now, but I have to remember it's a decade worth of learning and I can't expect everybody else to know. So I need to step back into that beginner's mindset of like, actually, let me throw out some really useful concepts for you, and that's enough.
Yeah. When I first started coaching, I also had the same thing. I was like, there are so many frameworks, so many beliefs, let's unpack them. And then they're like, wait. So they gave me a really, I thought like a common knowledge question. I was like, oh wait, so let's take a few steps back and then let's start from there. And then that become more effective. Because I feel like there's empathy, but there's also, we're in the weeds for so long, like we become our own expert and then we forget what's the beginner view of like this huge problem.
Yeah, and that is like the work of a teacher, right? And so I've been teaching for 10 years and I should know better, but I think it's different when you're like, this is my life's work. This is what I want to be doing forever. It feels so important. And so like I like let me spew to you all of the research I have read to kind of prove to you that I know something. And that's the imposter syndrome part that I need to deal with myself, right? That's not the responsibility of the parent. So that's definitely one big surprise. Another big surprise, I think, is just like parents can change and want to change. I think growing up as a kid, growing up when I was a teen, I didn't believe adults could change.
I still don't believe that yet. So let me convince me.
I grew up thinking adults didn't want to change, nor could they, even if they wanted to. And I was told this, right? And, we teach kids growth mindset, not adults, because they're fixed. And that's so silly because that's literally antithetical to what growth mindset is. But really, my mother convinced me that adults can change. For those who've read my New York Times story, you'll know that my mother and I had a really tough relationship growing up. We actually stopped talking for some time just because that relationship was so hard. And my brother is 10 years younger than I am, and she's changed a ton in the last 5, 6, 7 years. She's learned a lot about family dynamics, family therapy. She now runs a nonprofit helping other Mandarin speaking families learn about this kind of content. And I see her practicing. And then the empathy that you need to have is they've been doing this for 40, 50 odd years. Unlearning that and relearning something new takes time, right? It's slow. But if they're willing, it's possible. And I think watching my mother change has been the biggest gift of my life because it's given me such conviction that in fact adults can change. And there's the Silicon Valley very famous question for interviews is like, what do you believe in that nobody else believes in? I'm like, I believe adults can change and want to.
Yeah, that's such a great. I actually remember seeing your mom helping run Lemon, and also your brother passing along the pages, right? So it's a family business right there. And that segues really well into the next question I want to ask. What legacy do you want to have in this world?
I want to change parenting. I want to change how we think about parenting, right? I think people think it's an automatic thing, and I want people to realize you can grow as parents, and you should. The way we learn everything else, I think we should learn parenting, and it shouldn't have any stigma attached.
Love it. What advice would you give to your younger self? Like maybe overachiever, like let's be honest, like we're all kind of ambitious and there's a lot of things you want to do. Like what would you tell yourself when you're younger?
I think 2 things. One is you don't have to do it all. It's much better to be good at something than try to do everything. And I think I wasted a lot of energy and time trying to cover all my bases instead of just going down the path that really mattered to me. Even as a high schooler, I definitely had paths that mattered to me, but I was too afraid to devote everything to it. And I wish more people did that, did the soul searching early of what matters to them, and then pour their energy into it and trust that it'll get them somewhere, because I think that really is the best way. And the second thing I would say is and I know that my high school self would not understand this, but self-compassion and high standards are not mutually exclusive. I really believed that. The first time I learned about self-compassion, I was like, what is this bullshit? I literally was like, what about standards, right? Like, were you just going to sit there and sing Kumbaya? Like, no, standards, right? And now I know and believe that it's not separate things.
Yeah, I love it. And for many people who wants to get in touch with you and learn more about Cherish, how should they reach out?
Yes. Well, I'm going to quick plug here. Cherish is hiring. We are looking for interns for the fall. So if anyone's still looking for interesting things to do the fall, please reach out to me. My email is grace@hellocherish.com. So that's our website, hellocherish.com. So my email is just my first name @hellocherish.com.
And do you have any criteria you're looking for the internship? Like what kind of people are you looking for?
Well, we're looking for anyone interested, passionate about changing parenting. But specifically, we are very interested in finding folks who like developing content strategy, app development, and folks who have business operations experience.
Got it. And any job, degree requirements or no?
I don't believe in those things anymore. I believe talent comes from everywhere. So we don't even we ask for resume, work sample, whatever you feel is relevant. So I've had high schoolers submit their work to me, and I do consider all of them equally.
That's awesome. And please reach out to Grace if you're interested at grace@hellocherish.com, right? Great.
That's right.
And thanks everyone. I love this. I'll talk to you so much. And if you're interested in learning more, you can follow us on Facebook, subscribe to the newsletter at livingos.substack.com. And we'll see you next week with Christina. So have a nice one, everyone.
All right. Take care.
Bye.